Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. All right, should we just get into it? I think we already did intros a bit there.
Yeah,
all right.
Hop right in.
So, your brand is only as trusted as the AI behind it these days. Customer experience is being shaped by AI, and so is brand management and identity. So how do marketers stay in control? Responsible AI is a growth strategy, and trust is your most valuable brand asset. So welcome. We're going to dig into that topic. Amy, you're a leader in MarTech transformation that's touched top brands and touches top brands every day. Customer trust is critical to brand equity and sustainable growth. Now that we're in an agentic, now we're adding the agentic layer to that, autonomous customer journeys are the stakes are even higher. So when AI gets it wrong, what's the impact to the brand and who's accountable?
Well, let me start by saying first that trust is really the foundation of customer experience. And with AI now, the bar is significantly raised in terms of what customers are expecting and what they want and what they need. And we've talked for many years about this concept of personalization, which, I think has been very reactionary. And you see brands sort of responding to what they think a customer may want or what they believe they may need. And now with AI, you can predict what is it truly that is going to motivate and inspire my customer to feel and have the best experience that they can. With that also comes, a little bit of risk because you've got AI that can now not just send recommendations and do search on behalf of the customer, but also transact and make decisions on behalf of the customer. So, when you think about kind of who's responsible and how do you balance that, we're seeing a couple of themes emerge in terms of how to really do that properly. And one of the themes is around this idea of giving your customers transparency. They want to know what's happening to the information I'm sharing with the brand and how are you using the information that I'm giving you. They also want to be very much still in control. And if you give them the option, which I think is really important still, because there's an element, of trust, but there's also a desire to want to have some optionality and control. I was listening to this great podcast the other day about consumer talking about how he's using AI to do his grocery list and grocery shopping. And he'll use the AI to do everything from finding the product, scheduling the product, except he wants to press the go button, because he's afraid instead of 4 apples, he's going to get 40, or instead of costing $100, it's going to cost $1,000. So there's still this element of control. And I would say, the other aspect is also around governance. We talk a lot about governance and putting controls in place so that there's security and compliance around the information that the customer is giving you. So those are a couple of themes that we're seeing in order to really make sure that there's balance between the customer loyalty and the trust and the risk that's coming up with the evolution that we're in.
Yeah, just to follow on that, any examples maybe of an adverse effect that you've seen with a customer or a partner or somebody you're consulting with around that? Bad AI behavior and, what it took to recover from that?
I think I'm sure there's certainly examples of that. But what I would say is there's an element of fear. I think that's still, in the system a little bit. And what we're working with our clients on is really sort of moving from piloting and experimentation to really take the risk and understand what the potential is. So I feel like rather than, adverse effect, there's a little bit of hesitation that we need to navigate and move around. And that's a big topic right now in the market.
Okay, thank you. Tara, Pega has a powerful decisioning capability that combines predictive and adaptive AI so that marketers can scale personalization in real time. What elements would you tell brands are foundational to mitigating brand reputation risk?
Yeah, so I would say the first and most important is the culture, the top-down culture around AI and the policies that you create for your own employees, how you make everyone within your organization a steward of that responsible AI. We have 4 foundational elements that we talk about a lot. The first is transparency and explainability, so that you can explain why your AI behaved the way it did to a human audience. You need for it to be robust. So be exposed to real world experiences over and over again so that it's trained properly. It needs to be fair and unbiased. So, at Pega, we tell brands to really make sure that those data categories that have the potential for bias are monitored really closely. And then the last is empathy. And what I mean by empathy is that you would use AI to understand when maybe it's not appropriate to talk to your customer. Or I use the gaming example a lot, right? If you have a customer that's using your gaming site, you don't want to kind of game them into the ground, into bankruptcy, right? Because your customer goes away and that's like ultimately not in your interest.
That's bad.
Yeah, it's bad. So I would say those are the 5 with the culture, the most important elements.
Thank you. Amy, how are you helping and seeing brands implement these foundational elements without slowing down innovation?
That, the point around innovation, and I would say also really accelerating value, is a topic that's critical for all of the organizations and the brands that we're talking about. I mean, how many of you are hearing from leadership, we got to go faster, we got to innovate more, we can't slow down, right? Because there's no sort of forgiveness in the timeline and in the evolution that we're in. And so one of the, I talked a little bit earlier about this idea with regard to leading with outcomes, not experiments. Like, we want to accelerate value, and doing that at the foundation is going to help you know that the outcomes that you're solving for are going to create business value for the brand and for the customers of those brands. And so that's one, element of it. I think the other thing is ensuring that your organization and the people in your organization, which Tara touched on a little bit as well, are digitally fluent. We need to make sure people know what to do with the technology that we're putting in their hands. And I often think of the classic Ferrari example, right? Which is, you could build the best car, the shiniest object, you put it on a road with traffic and it's sort of stuck, right? So how do we eliminate those obstacles when we give any, AI tools to the people in the organization? And then lastly, I would say too, foundational, it's really critical to, think about leveraging cloud native composable technology so that when disruption does come, like what we're facing now, you're in a position to navigate that in a much more rapid and agile way.
Thank you. Tara, we all know getting customer attention is hard. Have you seen trust become a competitive advantage for brands when AI is done right? And maybe provide a couple of examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite example of this is one of our clients in Australia, Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Around pandemic time frame, they also had that outbreak of bushfires, and it really just took a toll, right? They were able to spin up, using AI, a benefits finder tool for their clients. And their clients were able to go out through this benefits tool finder and access grants and public funds. And it kept their consumer base solvent. And they actually turned a profit that year during pandemic when most brands were not. And they ended up building a trusted relationship with many, many clients with that effort. So that's my favorite example of that.
Okay, thank you. Amy, well, let me just ask, anybody playing the agentic drinking game? Because I'm about to say it, if anybody is. No? Okay, all right, there we go. All right, so moving into this agentic world, Amy, how are you helping brands think about the balance between human oversight and autonomous agents in their marketing ecosystem?
This is obviously a very hot topic, right? Because there's a lot of unknown, right, in terms of where the human comes in, where the agent, transitions, and vice versa. And so I heard this quote, and I'm quoting a lot of things, but do you guys know Naval Ravikant? I don't know if anyone listens to his podcast, but I was listening to his podcast the other day, and he talked about this concept of creativity requires humanity, and humanity requires optimism, right? Basically saying that there's a role, in terms of the human, and what that looks like in the future is certainly going to evolve. And I think for me, and when I talk to a lot of my clients, we we focus on this idea of, as the human, you don't necessarily need to control the outcome. And that's the shift we're seeing, right? But instead, you want to be focused on controlling and governing the systems that produce the outcomes. And that's kind of the shift that I think we're seeing right now, is how do we sort of inspire that with the clients that we're working with, and how do we, get comfortable in a world that does feel a little bit uncomfortable when we talk about the human and the agent together.
Well, I would imagine people are having a hard time with this one. So how are you advising marketing organizations to deal with it actually?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what I spoke about earlier in terms of empowering your people and making sure they understand what's in it for them. How do they use this in a way that's going to benefit them, progress them, and make them feel like they can do their job in a more effective way? And so empowering your teams, I think, is, and being very transparent with your teams as well. What is it that we're doing and why? I think that's really critical to bringing people along the journey and sort of driving that adoption curve.
All right, Tara, let's take a glimpse into the future. Looking ahead a couple of years from now, do you think customers will choose brands based on how their AI behaves?
So I feel like, we're all using AI to create better customer experiences, and customers, and not in a nefarious way, but should not really even know that they're interacting with AI. So that's kind of my view is, the goal of the brand is to create seamless, engaging, personalized customer experiences. And as long as the brand is doing that and not violating trust, customers are going to choose with their wallet those brands anyway. So I would say yes.
Okay. All right. This is to both of you. If there's one principle you'd give this audience for protecting brand equity while operating in an omni-channel marketing environment, what would it be?
I would say getting your data silos broken down, because that is the biggest barrier to having seamless, connected customer journeys. I always give a cautionary tale a little bit of a brand that I know that was offering different pricing in different channels, and that really erodes credibility and brand equity. And the reason for that is because they were just completely siloed within their architecture. So really get your data organized, clean, and flowing through your whole architecture.
I would say, and I'm going to piggyback onto the question that you asked Tara earlier a little bit too. I think the companies that build agents that create more trust are those that are going to win. And so I think it's not so much about, do I have the most agents, the most advanced agents? It's the agents that are most trusted by the customers are those that are going to win. So you asked the question earlier about, are consumers going to trust the AI to make decisions on their behalf? I think that's already happening. I mean, I think we all probably have examples of where we're using some AI to say, I'm trying to do this. What do you recommend? And going so far as to what I mentioned earlier, doing the transaction on behalf of the customer, right? So there's an element of trust that's already forming. And I do think the AI that's most trusted by the customer is going to win.
How do you build that trust with your customer base, though? I'm curious to get both your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's just really reinforcing over and over again that consistent experience. So when they see your brand, they know, that is what it says that it is. I always use Coca-Cola as the example, because I know exactly what it's going to taste like wherever I go in the world. It's going to be amazing, refreshing, easy to get. And that's kind of how you build that trust, is just reinforcing over and over again.
I completely agree with that. And, what I said earlier around the idea of transparency, which you mentioned as well, control and governance, I think all of those things help build trust. There's also this idea of sort of, there's a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, this idea of you go to extreme measures in order to do what your customer, what matters to them and what's important to them. And it may seem, a bit unusual for a restaurant to go feed a meter of a customer that's, dining with them, but they're doing that because they're creating a situation where they feel like their experience is so understood, or the experience they want is so understood. And so you're creating that, element of the customer really trusting and wanting to come back and being incredibly loyal.
That's interesting too, because we play in a lot of really, really competitive spaces like telco, right? Where there's very little differentiation. And so customer experience really is that differentiation in today's marketplace, I think.
Well, and to that end, I
How do
was
you make them
recently, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
I was just adding on, it's how you make them feel. It's all about the experience, yeah.
And following to that, I was recently at a roundtable, and there were a number of marketers talking about how they have to think insanely differently because they cannot control that brand experience across these different channels with agents in the middle of it all, and how they're looking at marketing and the commerce experience in a much different environment. I'm curious to get, your feedback on what are you talking to customers about, and what are you talking to your customers about when they start looking at how to manage the brand experience in a new environment that they might not even know is happening.
So we're touching a little bit on this concept of agentic commerce now, right? Which is the new way of doing commerce as well. And it really speaks to the fact that when you're building LLMs agents to transact on your behalf, you want to know that that agent is going to be able to serve up the recommendations and make that transaction for you, right? So the more we can draw the parallels between knowing and understanding what the customer wants and helping them with the decision process, you're starting to create sort of a seamless environment where more and more comfort is sort of coming into the process. And I think that's going to be a whole new way of commerce, right? I mean, it's completely shifting the way that we've thought about it in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it's really sort of defining the environment and workflows that your AI operates in and having centralized governance over that AI. At Pega, we talk a lot about having a governance board across functional areas, having people from across their organization that are aware of how these are being implemented, these agents. So I would say, just really understanding that it needs to be defined, knowing where the human needs to be in the loop, and continuing with that culture of responsibility at all levels.
Cool, thank you. We have a couple of minutes to take some questions from the audience. If anybody's got any questions for Amy or Tara. No? All right. Words of advice from both of you for the audience as marketers here look at approaching this new world.
Yeah, I would say I'm just going to hit on transparency again because it's so important. I think we all remember when GDPR hit and those data breaches from back in the old ad tech days. I really hope that we never have that moment again with consumers because they know that, how we're using their data. They have the ability to opt out. And I hope we treat AI that way versus how we sort of treated data in the past.
It's a great point. I'll add this, thinking about the outcome first is so incredibly important. If we treat AI like a technology initiative, we're going to miss the point of what it can actually do and how it can create differentiated value for the brands out there.
Yeah, we talk a lot at AWS about how governance and innovation are parallel paths and how they have to work together because you can't have one without the other. Maybe in closing, let's talk a little bit about, how that intersection is affecting both of your roles and how you're talking to customers.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to steal an anecdote from one of my customers, Wells Fargo. I was talking about responsible AI on a panel, and the gentleman basically said that they use governance and regulatory requirements as their path to innovation. It's a guardrail for innovation. It keeps them pointed in the right direction, and I just love that.
And there's a risk, I think, with too much governance squashing the potential of innovation, right? I mean, we put a lot of risks and security and control around what can be sort of experimented with. And I think there's an element of giving your people, your teams, the freedom to really play around with the art of the possible. I don't know if we spend enough time really thinking about what does the future look like. And so using the governance in a way that, obviously keeps things safe and compliant, but also kind of extending the leash a little bit so that we can inspire innovation, because our people have incredible ideas. I mean, I see a lot of new talent coming through Accenture on a regular basis, and the way that they use the technology, the ideas that they're bringing to the table, it's incredibly inspiring, and we want to embrace that, and we want to motivate others to sort of follow their lead as well.
Well, we can build with AI the next set of innovative things. What's a wish list from each of you around what you'd like to see happen with something at Pega, something at Accenture? How are you actually using AI to better what you do every day?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see our clients innovating in new ways, just based on what I've seen in the past with ad tech and martech. I feel like we make these amazing products for one reason, and then they actually turn out to be great for something else. So I'm excited to see what direction AI takes our clients in being able to do that.
I'll add, Accenture has invested literally billions of dollars into building AI solutions and capabilities. And it's an incredibly serious mandate within the organization, right? So we're all staying very relevant. We're, helping our clients with their own AI reinvention journeys. And a lot of it is unknown, right? So there's sort of an aspect of, let us show you what we can do. And I hope that we continue to have that opportunity, because I'm very proud of, what the team has created across marketing, but the entire front office, which is what Song really focuses on. And it would be wonderful to continue to show, our clients and have them understand the power of what we've built with platforms like Pega and others, because I think they really are game changers in solving for the outcomes that our clients are looking to achieve.
Thank you. It makes everybody a builder, actually, which is kind of fun, right? Everybody's getting to build new skills. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for your time today. Thank you to the audience for your time today, and have a really great rest of your time in Cannes.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.